Good afternoon, everyone. We should get started. We have a lot to cover today. Welcome to the last of our Mondays in March before Dr. Callender speaks to us next week on a Tuesday. This is the third year I've been doing this. Actually, I've been here, fourth year. I've been 3 years here, fourth one I've done. But today we're going to talk about a number of things, including where we are financially, how we're building and growing for tomorrow, a number of changes we've made within business and finance we want to talk about. Each of us have been talking about a culture of trust, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. How we're trying to market and advance our efforts throughout here, let people know what we're doing, and we'll try to wrap up. As I've thought back over the last 3 years, the kinds of things we can talk about and so forth, and it seems to me that we're all pretty busy. And how many of you at times think that you're so busy that your head could spin at times? Okay. Well, I can tell you, you're not alone. But as I was thinking about this, what kept coming back to me is that there's 3 things I think about here, is that we've got a bunch of incredible people. And if you think of the progress we've made over the last 3 years since the storm, not just in recovering from the storm, but some of the advances that we've made, we are writing a golden chapter in the history of UTMB. And I hope you're all very proud of that, because I feel very humbled and proud to be part of that chapter. But when you look back, because we're always busy, we have our nose to the grindstone, we keep doing and doing and doing, but when you look up, we've accomplished a whole bunch of things. We have almost 1 million square feet was damaged during the storm. We've got 70% of that back in service. It's taken a while, but we've got FEMA to authorize about a little over $600 million of expenses. A lot of that's in process, some of it's done. On top of, we did $140 million of emergency repairs right after the storm. We've remodeled a good hunk of the John Seeley Hospital. That phase is coming to an end pretty soon. Once the Jenny's done, we'll come back and do some more there. Just in the last 18 months, we've added almost $80 million of new equipment to the facility. We talk about headcounts and how many people that we employ and so forth, but we lose track of how many people we've actually hired over that 3 years. And Dr. McKinley tells me we've hired exactly 5,558, not 57 or 59, but 58. We've remodeled or added a lot of clinical space over the last several years. And added students, we have 17% just in the last 3 years. We have 7 departments that are nationally ranked with NIH, 3 in the top 10. The list could go on and on and on, but if you feel like your head is spinning, it should be, because we've done a whole bunch of stuff, and there's stuff to be done. But I want to spend a few minutes on finances. Right after the storm, the state gave us some money to help with the storm repairs, some money to help build the new Jenny and so forth, but along with that, came a directive to get our financial house in order, to get ourselves financially stable. And I believe we've done that. For the last 2 years, we've had a positive margin. It's modest, but positive. This year, we have a break-even budget planned. And that's hard, because even though we expected some reductions in general revenue, reductions in reimbursement, and so forth, actually budgeting it and doing it makes it, even though you expected it, isn't any less painful when you actually have to do it. So when you add those things all up, plus other things that aren't on the list, we've almost had $100 million of resources not available to us this year that we've had in prior years. We have 3 principal or key revenue sources. One is state appropriation, sometimes referred to it as general revenue. And over the last 3 years, that has continued to decline. The state of Texas has had its budget issues. All the state agencies have taken some kind of a reduction in general revenue, and we're no exception to that. The other major revenue stream we have is in sponsored research. The last 3 years, the NIH budget has basically gone down a little bit, and in real dollars has gone down a lot. So competition for funding is more keen than it's been in the 20 or some years I've been in this business. And we're no different than many other places. We're beginning to see declines in the number of awards, research awards, that we have here. So both the general revenue and the research revenue streams are declining. On a positive note, the clinical revenue, clinical activity continues to increase. Hospital admissions continue to grow the last 3 years, although OB and GYN is up flat or a little bit down. The diamonds are where we expected to be this year, so we're a little under budget. Now, the difference seems pretty minor, but when you look at the numbers, and I'll show you the numbers in a minute, it's a little bit more significant than that little differences seem to show. And there's lots of reasons for that. One key reason is capacity. We planned on a certain number of beds. Trying to get them online is taking a little bit longer than we liked. You know, it's an old building. When you get in to do things, sometimes you find a lot of stuff that you didn't plan for and what have you. Hospital outpatient and clinic visits, on the other hand, are growing through the roof. The mainland activity is exceeding all of our expectations for this year, and the island activity is continuing to grow, and that's exceeding our expectations for this year. So we have some positive news there. We're growing, and we've been focusing a lot on trying to bring the clinical enterprise back online so we can generate revenue, start feeding this flywheel, this financial flywheel, to feed our other missions and so forth. But when you put all that together, this is what the last 2 years and what we project this year. The red bars are the last 2 years actual, and this is our budget for this year. The blue lines are where we were at January in each of the 3 years. And you can see we had some positive margin. That's about a 3% margin, so it's not very, very significant. And this year we've got a razor-thin margin to work with. So when you show up and you ask for money, and if we happen to say no, it's not because we like to say no, it's because it's hard when there's hardly much there to distribute and so many needs and demands for resources. If we blow up the numbers, that little difference I showed you on the emissions translates into quite a bit of dollars in revenue. But the key things that manage is we're down about $20 million in revenue from where we expected when we did the budgets. We are adjusting. If you look at the operating expenses, we are down approximately that same amount of money. So we are adjusting to available resources, which is part of what we've been trying to do in this planning, is each month looking at where we're at and adjusting, making mid-course corrections as we go. An area that we do have some concerns with, we call Ike-related activity. That's reimbursement from FEMA for different operating expenses still related to the storm. We're getting a little less money than we expected from FEMA. So we're going back and looking at all of the numbers out there and what we expect to see how much we need to revise based on what FEMA currently thinks they want to reimburse us for. So that difference concerns us because in order to have a balanced budget, we have to make up that much more out of regular operations. But getting here isn't an accident. It's taken a lot of hard work by everybody in this room and anybody that's watching. We've had a lot of friends and so forth helping us, but it's been a lot of work, and we know that. But what's guiding us is we have a road ahead. We talk about that a lot. It's the institution's strategic plan, which we've boiled down into this little pamphlet, which we have some copies out there. But that's what's guiding us in this process. It's keeping us focused on what we want to work on. It gives us an opportunity to touch base as we do every quarter. Are we still on track? Are there any mid-course corrections that we need to make? Gives us a chance to measure our successes and so forth. So we'll continue those activities to keep our focus. We do a lot of financial forecasting and projecting and so forth. We think about lots of different scenarios and what the financial impact would be if this or that happens, so that we could be prepared if something changes in the environment. We don't have to say, oh my gosh, what do we do? We've given it some thought. So we do a lot of work there. If you manage a budget, each month, there is an intense review as to where are we, where are you? If you're off budget, what are you going to do to get back on track? What kind of mid-course corrections are you going to make? So we do a lot of that, and I think anyone here that manages a budget can probably echo that comment. As I mentioned, the clinical enterprise continues to expand. We've made some significant growth we've had some significant growth on the island. Certainly Victory Lakes and Victory Lakes Town Center continue to get oohs and ahs from our patients that go up there, as do some of the other new facilities that we've opened. We're going to continue to find ways to invest in activities that we think will grow resources. And that's hard when you have meager resources to work with. We're going to try to keep our focus on that. We do a lot of things here, and it's important for the community and the region to know exactly what we do. So we're doing a little bit of more marketing than we have done before. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. With some of our key revenue streams going down, it's important that we intensify philanthropic efforts. We have a major capital campaign going on now, but annually we need to continue to look for financial support from that area. We're doing a lot of things to improve our processes, take work out of the system, take non-value stuff out of the system. How can we add value? So we've started lean efforts in Six Sigma. We have a number of displays out in the lobby that show some of the things the health system and business and finance have been working on. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I know we've got some work ahead of us, but I think with this crew and everyone else at UTMB, there's not a doubt in my mind that if we stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish here, we're going to make our way through this and get financially stronger each and every year. With Lean, we've started both within the health system and business and finance this activity called Lean. And what that activity is, for those who are not familiar with Lean, is looking at a flow of a product or service through an organization. Instead of just trying to optimize or maximize things in a vertical slice like within a department, we're actually looking at flow across the organization. And some of those displays out there will show you how that process flows and works. When you look at it that way, you can find opportunities to say, this doesn't make sense because it doesn't help the next person in line do its job. And so you find ways of taking some work out of the system and adding value to the process each step of the way. Within business and finance, we've trained a lot of people. If you see them, they wear like little blue shirts that say Lean on it. Are there any of them in the room here today? If they are, stand up. Yep, they have these kind of shirts on here. We've trained a whole bunch of people, and they're helping us. We'll train some more, both in the health system and business and finance, to continue these projects as we go forward. These are the 7 projects we've done within business and finance, and each of them have found ways to take work out of the system, make things flow a little bit better, save some dollars, and basically make things work better. I feel obligated to talk briefly about the TDCJ contract with Correctional Managed Care in the state. And that picture looks a little fuzzy to me, and the negotiations at times seem a little fuzzy to us. But as Donna Sollenberger mentioned last week at hers, we have managed to work through a very unsettling period of time. We do have a contract for this fiscal year, which will reimburse UTMB for its costs. And that's all we're asking for, is reimburse us for our costs. Now, our costs, if you look at our costs for providing prisoner health care to every other state, we are the lowest, if not the lowest, among the lowest, if not the lowest, cost of any state in the country. So it's hard to improve much more beyond that. For 13, we're still working on it. There's conversations going on in Austin at the legislative leadership with the regents, UT System, and us to see what a contract for 13 could look like, and could people live with that, whatever the terms might be for that. So stay tuned, we're still working on that. And as Donna mentioned at her session, for CMC people that might be looking in or listening, at the end of the day, we still have patients there that are going to need to be taken care of. So regardless of what the contract is or isn't, there's still going to be work there, and they're still going to need to be taken care of. So hang in there, we'll get this thing done somehow. I do want to mention another item that's been in the press a little bit, is our commitment to uncompensated care. There was an article last week, and there's been articles before, that somehow suggests that we are abandoning or shrinking our commitment to the poor. And I can assure you that is fiction. In fiscal 10, we spent about $131 million in uncompensated care. For fiscal 11, we have a comparable amount of dollars that we provided in uncompensated care. When you put that in context, it represents just under 20% of our operating expenses. That hardly seems like we're shirking our responsibilities. But this is an issue that goes beyond UTMB, and it goes beyond the region. If you took all the providers in this region, there is probably not enough resources to take care of the current need. So this is not a UTMB issue. It's probably not even a regional issue. This is an issue that's going to continue to take a lot of thought and challenge us to say, how do you take minimal resources and apply them to such big need? So at the end of the day, I think the takeaway message we want you all to have is you should be very proud of the care that we provide to the most vulnerable about us. We've done it for over 120 plus years. We have some very innovative programs that help us manage and provide care to that population. So at the end of the day, you should be very proud, and we'll deal with the paper as we deal with the paper, but as you read things in there, please pay attention to the facts. We'll be getting out some other factual information so that you'll have that going forward to say this is what we actually do. So those that want to spin it differently, you'll have the true facts. Moving on to more pleasant things, though, is our facilities. There's lots of things going on in facilities. It's all around us. When we first started, all I heard is, Bill, when are we going to get started? Bill, when are we going to get started? Well, we were starting. It was working out with FEMA what they would pay for. We did some other things that are more infrastructure related, and we hid them behind temporary walls and stuff so they weren't very visible to us. And because of the nature of the projects, they weren't quite as disruptive. But still, to many of us who wanted to go very fast, it must have seemed like this. But now when you look around campus, it is virtually everywhere. The bigger the bubble, I think the more disruptive it is. But besides a lot of things in process, we have completed a lot of things. Old Red is open. Student enrollment and student services is back in there. There's still some work to do, but it's open. The John Seeley modernization, this phase is coming to an end. There's a significant number of rooms that have been modernized. The maternity center is open. The children's hospital will be a hospital within a hospital, will be opening shortly. The Blocker Burn unit has been expanded, and as you can see over here, the clinical service wing and the new Jenny has started after a long, long time in development. We've shown you these before, and they're worth showing again. They're beautiful facilities, the Multi-Specialty Center and Stark Diabetes Clinic down at Victory Lakes Town Center. And the reason I want to mention this is, besides looking very beautiful and our patients love it, this is a good example when we have the operating people working with the facilities people. Because besides looking very attractive, it was designed to optimize patient flow through the clinic. And that's what we need to do as we look at new facilities going forward, is optimize and think about the care we give and how to optimize the flow of the patient through the system, not just pretty spaces. And so we're working on that. As I mentioned, if you haven't seen some of the spaces in John Seeley, they're very beautiful spaces, and our patients will love them. We've mentioned that the primary care pavilion will be reopening soon. That is a leased facility from the Seeley and Smith Foundation. We don't own that building. But one of the things we're going to have to do to mitigate that is to put a flood wall around the building. We'll be doing that after the building opens, so that's work is still to be done. We're going to try to do as much of the work around the entrances as possible before it opens, so to minimize that disruption. But that's a project that will continue on. And we continue to develop our site up Victory Lakes. We continue to grow. We'll add tomotherapy, a cancer center unit up there. That's a campus that you'll continue to probably see more development on as we grow. The Hospital Concourse project is going to start very, very soon, and that's going to be another very disruptive project. And it's got a lot of goals in mind. One of them is besides looking very beautiful and more spacious, is we'll push the walls out, and I'll show you that in a minute, so you'll have some window views. That'll help with orientation as you try to work your way through these buildings. But more importantly, we're going to separate the public hallways, kind of like Disney, the back of the hall, where we'll have staff and patient transport and so forth. It'll be out of the public corridors. Right now, everybody shares that same corridor. We'll install some water-resistant material, so in the event of another event, we'll be able to clean it up and get it back in service faster. One of the key things, and it's taken a lot of time, is we're separating all of the utilities, the air handling, the electrical, and what have you, the first floor from the rest of the building, so that in the event of an event, we can shut down that first floor without impacting the rest of the building. Last time things got sucked up into humidity and so forth into the building, we'll be able to help minimize that by separating that floor. As I mentioned, it'll start pretty soon. It'll be a year and a half type project. We'll be closing the entrance to John Seeley, making some temporary entrances as we go along through this process. So it's going to be disruptive and go on for a long period of time. So if people grouse, just say we're going to make things better for our patients and so forth, and you might have to walk a little different way on any particular day. It's about a $15 million project, and FEMA is only paying for $2 million of it. So when people ask, why do we need a margin, this is a good example of we have to fund the difference with our own funds. And without a margin, there are no funds to fund activities like this. But in this project, as I mentioned, it's separating the public corridor, which is the lighter yellow here, so that you'll be able to enter and work your way all the way back to the, what used to be called University, UHC, through a corridor that way. The interior corridors will be for staff and patient transport and so forth. So we'll separate those two traffic patterns going forward. We get a lot of questions about our historic properties, and the challenge with those is how do we best mitigate those for future storms or future events. Old Red, as I mentioned, is back online. There's still some work to do, mostly with window replacement, and that'll take a period of time yet to finish. The Rosenberg House and Open Gates, we've been looking at how do we mitigate things and trying to work with FEMA. And other than mitigating the mechanical systems and elevator type controls, we're going to end up putting them back in the way they were, okay? So those plans are going, and those things should be ready by the fall. The Customs House will be a little bit later after that. We'll do some remodeling, mitigate the mechanical systems, and that'll come about a year later. Now, if you've been on Market Street, it's hard to get down Market Street. You might wonder what we're doing. Well, through the Jenny Old Shrine property is where our telecommunications and IT network runs. And so we need to move it. We need to reroute it. And the best reroute is to take it down Market Street so we can connect it to other facilities that we have, other connections that we have along the way. So we'll go down Market and wrap around and so forth to make a nice loop. But we're doing something very interesting with the technology there, that rather than ripping up the entire street, we're boring a hole down part of it with this auger device, which I thought you might want to see.
Basic.
And onward and onward and onward it goes. We'll put those about every 2 blocks. So you'll see them digging a hole about every 2 blocks to put this auger through and so forth. It's not as clean. Actually, the dirt does go somewhere. It goes to the back of the machine, and they got to haul it out of there. But another project, and you got a note on this last week, that we had closed a section of the road around the University Plaza parking garage. As we continue with the Jenny Seeley project, which is here, there's not much space for the contractors to work, so they need as much space as possible. They pushed the fence out while we're taking down the Jenny as far as we could let them at that time. To do the old shrine, we've got to push it out further. So they pushed the fence out that far, which will close this section of that road. We've done some modifications at these intersections to straighten them out, and this loop now, or this 3/4 of a loop, is all two-way. So you got to be careful if you're down at that end of the campus that the traffic pattern is differently. The police were out there last week helping people navigate if they were confused and so forth. But as I mentioned, the primary care pavilion is going to open soon, and that's up here. The John Seeley is down here, and right in the middle of this is going to be a lot of truck traffic. We're hoping the trucks come in mostly through this way. You can still get in and out 6th Street. But I went there the other day, and there was a big truck trying to get in there, and you kind of wait and wait and wait, so I would avoid that going that way if at all possible. So as we're doing this, people are going to need some help with how do you get here? How do I get around and so forth? So please stay tuned with what's going on with the construction and so forth over the next few years so we can help people. Now last month, as we were taking down the old Jenny Seeley, it came down in chunks. They work from the back because there's not a lot of room in the front, at least as you look at it from University Parking Garage to see that. There were 3 other smaller buildings there. There's 5 buildings total. 3 of the smaller ones we took down. You couldn't see those because they were hidden, but now you get into bigger projects and so forth. So you probably saw something like this as the rubble was coming down. What you may not have seen is what happened on March 3rd at 10:14 in the evening, which was this. I love the little guys coming out checking. I think at this point it was supposed to fall. And we did check, the crane did survive, that was over there, so it was close, but it did survive. So Todd Leach is helping us to try to get for the old shrine, as that's starting to come down today, that hopefully we'll have a camera that can do some better live streaming instead of these pictures every 2, 4, 5 minutes apart, at least while the building is coming down, so you can see that going forward. But looking forward, we should be done with the new Jenny substantial completion, and this is fall of 2015. By the time you do all the commissioning and start moving people in and start seeing people, and that might go out to the spring. But you're going to see something like this over the next 3 years. And they'll help give us a state-of-the-art facilities. Once we get that up, there's some work to go back to finish the John Seeley with some of the backfill things. It'll take another year. But that project is finally under the way. You'll start seeing it come out of the ground pretty soon. I'm told that site ought to be clear in about May. They'll have everything down and all the debris moved. If anyone's interested, we are recycling it. They're taking the cement and breaking that up so it can be recycled. The metal is being recycled. That's all part of the contractor's contract. We are also making some major investments, not just in bricks and mortar, but in our information systems. We're upgrading both our financial system and our HR system. Those projects will start and run over this year and the rest of next year, I think. But we do have a very major project that we talk about. It's called UTMB Connect. And what will end up is with this project is a single electronic patient record. So we'll combine patient scheduling, registration, billing with the electronic medical record, so everything is going to be in one place and accessible. That'll allow us to have a lot of improvements in just the flow of activity across the organization. As reimbursement systems change and our contracts with third-party payers change, we need to get these systems in place in order to be able to deal with those contracts. And as George Gaddy likes to tell me, this is a complicated project, as most projects are. There's about 125 systems we have to integrate. This is kind of a partial diagram of all the things that need to be connected. And you don't need to read it other than to say it's bewildering, and I'm glad we have people like George and everyone else working with him, Mark Hirschbaum and so forth, that can help us manage through this environment. So when we get done, our patients are going to be able to do a lot of things electronically. They can schedule an appointment, pay their bill, check on items, just like you can do with many other businesses around here, and that should be a significant improvement. But we have to get this one right for a couple of reasons. One, it's 60% of our revenue stream. And so there's not a second chance on this. We got to get it right or we have a huge financial issue in front of us. And it's another huge capital project. It's about a $42 million project. It'll run over the next 18 months or so to get it done. We need to be done by October of 2013. And we'll have over 200 employees or consultants working on this over that period of time. So another huge project going on top of all these major capital projects that we have. One of the other key changes we'll make with this new system is we'll be able to combine both the physician bills and the hospital bill into a single patient bill. You know, if you've gotten bills, you've got many bills, and it's hard to figure out who's on first sometimes. We'll be able to get that down to one bill. We're going to start pretty soon with some focus groups. We'll get some patients and others to help us design what that new statement should look like. And those activities should be starting pretty soon. But the federal government decided they wanted to help. And so, as they like to do, they help simplify this by making it more complex. When we issue a bill, we have to code it. We have to have a diagnosis, what was wrong with you, and a procedure code, what was done to you. There's at least one procedure code, maybe there's several more. So currently, that coding system is referred to as ICD-9. That's the system we currently have. That's going to change to ICD-10. And that'll change. It's scheduled October 2013. They may extend that a little bit. I think the original date was 2011. It got pushed to 2013. We need to get this done, so we're not moving our end date. October of 2013 is when we will be done. But to show you the kind of explosion in coding, right now for medical diagnosis, there's about 14,000 codes. That'll change to 68,000 codes. So the level of granularity is expanding exponentially. Procedure codes will go from 4,000 to 87,000 codes. So just think of the level of granularity there. For something that's as simple as a broken leg, we go from one, not the 24 choices, but a granularity that has 24. So left and right, first time, second time, and so forth. So it's a lot more detail. For those doing research and clinical research, this may add a lot of value to it. I think it may just add a lot of times a lot more data, but there should be some more value in here as for those that do clinical studies and clinical research. But it's so granular that we have a little fun with this, that there's no matter what you can think of, I think there's like 397 codes for bird bites. Think about this. I had to realize there was 397 types of birds, but anyway, here's some examples. I'm sure we see a lot of burning ski jets around this island, but so as you can imagine, it gets very complicated, very detailed as we go forward. We have made a number of changes in business and finance in our organizations to consolidate and streamline some functions. About a year ago, Dr. Ron McKinley joined us. He's brought in some additional leaders. Dr. Ian Barrett has joined us from University of Massachusetts Medical School, where he was Associate Vice Chancellor for HR. Ian is leading our compensation efforts as we try to do that. Physician leadership academies he's working on developing, as well as reestablishing our diversity efforts. Bo Stoltz is here from Texas Children's. He's helping us with a lot of process redesign in HR. He's involved heavily in the lean process here. And as part of these changes, as part of these reorganizations changes, we're taking all the East teams and combining them into one business center. And he's helping us lead those efforts. And Teresa Nangle, who joined us in Cincinnati from Kettering Health Network, she's helping us reinvent our talent acquisition efforts here a little bit. Ron and his team have put together a very comprehensive strategic plan. It goes from soup to nuts, so we'll be changing a lot of things within HR to make it more modern to where it should be. One of the areas that we put a considerable amount of effort with Teresa and her group is changing how we recruit people. We're all involved in recruiting. The current system is more designed to post and pray. Now, praying is fine. I guess that's a good thing to do, but we're thinking that somewhere in this process we might actually do some recruiting. So Teresa and her team are doing that. We're trying to develop pools of people reaching out, trying to pull people in. Some of you that have gone through this new process, I think you found your pools to be deeper and have many more qualified candidates than what you used to get. And that process will just get better as we go forward. In the police department, we've tried to improve and strengthen our command structure. We have 4 new lieutenants. We have Lieutenant Cooper, pictured on your left, with the chief, Lieutenant Curry, and the chief. We didn't realize the chief is such a photo hog. Lieutenant Irwin and the chief. And oh my goodness, Lieutenant DeOrd and the chief. So we like to pick on the chief because he has a good sense of humor. For those of you who have noticed, the police have moved out of the first floor of the administration building and now over in Rebecca Sealy. Dispatch will stay there and eventually be located on a different floor within administration. But the police offices are now over in Rebecca Sealy by the purser's office and the parking people there. But we are earning some recognition. UT Systems started a Police Chief of the Year award this year. Our chief won the first award. We're delighted about that. He's very humble about that. But more importantly, we've earned law enforcement recognition, which is the first step to being fully accredited as a police department. There's only 1,000 accredited departments in the country out of about 18,000. And so at least we're recognized, so we're now part of a very elite group. The chief and his team will continue to work on that with the goal of trying to get fully accredited by next year. So a lot of accomplishments there as we see our police department continue to advance. We've also, as I mentioned, made a number of changes in how we do budgeting, accounting, and somewhat revenue cycle. And to try to go through these in some order, with budgeting, we've tried to do a better job, we want to do a better job with coordinating and integrating all of our budget efforts across the organization, instead of each entity trying to do their own thing, and then somehow we put it all together, have a lot more control and integration. So we've consolidated, streamlined it, rearranged some people's jobs and so forth. Celia Bailey Ochoa has agreed to be the leader of that, so she's been appointed as the Vice President for Budget and Analysis. Her light's on every night, very, very late, and she's here very, very early, so we want to be kind to Celia right now until we get through the budget process, since there's a lot of transition, a lot of learning we're all doing. John States, over here, now has responsibility for all of our institutional accounting and reporting, whether it's general accounting and reporting, the practice plan, grants, the post-award grant accounting. And John had darker hair earlier when we appointed him, but he's also getting involved in the FEMA activities, so that's where the gray hair is coming from. And within the IT area, with all that's going on, we needed to improve some more depth, more bench strength depth. So Todd Leach has been appointed as our Associate Vice President and Deputy Chief Information Officer to help us get a little bit more strength there. With the supply chain, we've done a number of things. Previously, accounts payable, purchasing, and logistics all reported to different people. We're going to change that and integrate those so that they all report to a single leader. They'll have directors over each function, all reporting to a single leader. Carlos Escobar has agreed to help organize and lead these efforts. He's in the process of recruiting that supply chain leader. I hear we had some good candidates this week, but we need to get that position filled to move on. As we look at our finances and where do we have opportunities, supply chain, we've got millions of dollars of opportunities. And I do have another prop here, so we got these prop table. This is a black pen. And last year we bought 118,000 black pens. Now, a black pen is a black pen and so forth, but we bought 500 different kinds of black pens. Think of that for a minute, 500 different kinds of black pens. They range from a nickel to $10. Now, as we cut in budgets, I know where we're going to look, to those $10 people, but if we could standardize around at least one black pen, we spend about $33,000. If we could go to the lower end of that price range, we'd probably save $30,000 just on standardizing black pens. Now think about the red ones and the blue ones. I think we have other colors too, but maybe not 118,000 of them. But those are simple things that are there for the taking. It gets a little bit more complicated when you get onto the medical side and what are we going to standardize or limit the choices around. But those are activities that will produce significant savings for us going forward. And we need to get on with those savings. So we're delighted that Carlos is helping us move some of those activities forward finally. Each of us has been talking about creating a culture of trust. And as we look forward and think about where we want to be, we need to continue to work on an environment where we feel it's okay to raise your hand and say, I got a question. I'm not so sure we should be doing this. Or I don't understand why we're doing this. Could you please explain it to me? People are hesitant to do that. And we want to get to an environment where you're not hesitant to do that. It's okay. And for those of you that get asked the question, we really hope you take a moment and don't chew somebody's head off, but you say, let's talk about this, and let's understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we need to continue to work on that. The bottom line for all of this is at the end of the day, our patients or our customers, if you want to think of it that way, that's the name of the game here. And we want to have a safe environment for them. So what's next? Well, the executive leadership is talking about it like we're doing here and at each of the Mondays in March, and Dr. Kellner did at his town hall. We want to continue to talk about this and continue to try to find ways or find barriers to that culture so we can do something about that, try to change that culture, try to get rid of those barriers. We'll be working on, do we have the right policies here? Do we penalize people in a way that we shouldn't be for saying some things? We'll have a code word for, so we can do things in a very professional way. And we probably should have a code word when someone isn't listening to remind them that, hey, I asked a question and you blew me off. But again, the goal is to have a very safe environment and make this personal to each and every one of us. Dr. Richardson, when we talked about this in a leadership group, said, what does this mean to us? And we all thought different things, and she summed it up very nicely, that we want to be able to look anybody in the eye and say the care that you get here is the same care that you want your most cherished loved one to receive. And that kind of simplifies and cuts through all the different slogans and things very nicely. So we're going to continue work on this, but we need everybody's help and engagement through this. Promoting UTMB. You'll have seen some of our billboards, some of our signs, some of our advertising. We have a multi-phase approach here. The first phase was awareness. We had a new tagline, a new logo, and so we put that out to try to get some awareness there. The next phase is to take that a little deeper and try to emphasize there's 120 years of learning here. So it's a very established and knowledgeable organization to come get your care at. We want to let people know about the technological advances that we have here, like MyChart and so forth. And we do want to emphasize access. With 40 locations, 80 clinics, or over 80 clinics, those are the three themes we'll be pushing through this particular marketing effort. If you haven't seen it, we've got 2 new commercials. This is one of them.
At UTMB Health, your day is our day. With state-of-the-art tools like MyChart Electronic Access, 120 years of experience taking care of Texas, and more than 40 locations throughout the Bay Area, we are so very ready for you. UTMB Health, working together to work wonders.
If you recognize some of the people in those ads, we use our own faculty and staff through these commercials and so forth, so some of them should look familiar because they are. To wrap it up in a few words, so we have a couple of minutes for questions at least, there's a lot going on, and everything that you've seen here is the work of all of your efforts, that of some of our legislative leaders. We have a lot of friends that help us, but this is a combined effort through a lot of people working very, very hard, and we know that. The financial challenges are going to be there. Each year it's going to be tough. We need to find different ways and smarter ways of trying to do more with less dollars. That's just a given. But we're going to continue to work on that, continue to find ways to optimize the resources that we do have. If somebody asks, what do you do for a living and so forth, one of the things we could say is we're defining the future of healthcare. UTMB is going to do that, and we're going to be a leader in that. I just know it. That's just our nature because we collaborate so much and so forth. I hope you're as proud of UTMB as I am for being part of this organization because there's a lot going on. There's a lot to be proud of just from the recovering from the storm. It's such an amazing story that I hope we're keeping chronicles and logging this because this is going to be great for the historians that like to write our chapters for our history. So with that, we've got a couple minutes for questions. Okay. There's a microphone. Wait, let's get a microphone there.
Well, what's been the impact thus far of the Medicare Recovery Audit Program on UTMB, and then what's the projected impact, especially in the context of the move to ICD-10? And I guess what's our strategy for dealing with that?
Well, we've been at this for a long time with these audits. Of what he's referring to is after we get all said and done and we build Medicare and Medicaid, there are programs that come back in and audit what we've done and say, have we billed the correct amount? So those have been going on for some time. When they first started out, you would get these really interesting interpretations of the rules and kind of a threat to pay up or else. And so we'd end up paying and then trying to negotiate some kind of adjustment refund. As those programs have evolved now, the people that run those different agencies and programs now get penalized if there's a refund. So they're a little less anxious to just come out and throw something out in front of you. As we go forward, I think if we do our coding right and we do a lot of work to make sure that that's right, those activities will go on. We get audited all the time for lots of different activities. We're not sure that's going to have a material impact on what we do because we think we're doing it right to begin with. Anything else?
Yeah, it seems like we're doing a little bit more advertising and marketing than before. Can you tell us how much we're spending on that and why?
Well, we're spending about $1.5 million on that. Now, in perspective, MD Anderson spends about 10 times that on advertising. But we do a lot here, and people don't know always what we do. So as we expand, it's important that, one, we let people know all the different things that we're doing here, and as our marketing campaign evolves, right now I've mentioned we're doing a few things to try to focus that. We'll eventually evolve into featuring particular programs and things through the next phases. But it's important we do that so people know where they can go and think of us when they need care. There was one other hint.
You mentioned correctional managed care contract negotiations. Could you give us any idea on the timeline for the FY13 negotiations?
I wish I could. We've been at this at the end of January. We were supposed to have an arrangement, and we don't, and we're into March. The legislative people, the House and Senate, are looking at where we are. They're going to come back with some suggestions of what they think. We're not sure of the exact timing. I know they're talking about it as recently as last week. We're hoping we get some kind of answers back by April. But, you know, again, they need to do their thing, and then we'll have to have some conversations with them once they tell us their thoughts. So that'll be a while.
Mr. Elder, I have a question for you. You've shared a lot of major milestones with us today, and unless I'm mistaken, tomorrow is a significant date for you personally. Is that true?
No, this is the last day of winter, so.
Way behind.
Thank you. Actually, the official date is tomorrow, and Dr. Kellner, I always remember us because his birthday is the day after mine, so we need another cake here, guys. Is there anything else? If not, putting these productions together, I call it production, takes a lot of people. So I thought we should have some credits of some of the people that were involved in this. So thank you all for coming and have a wonderful afternoon.